There was a boxer whose name was Rocky Balboa. I heard a few last. For those of you who don't know, he was a fictional character. But they made 7 movies about him, so, anyway. But there's a boxer, his name was Rocky Balboa. And in the 3rd movie, at this point, he was the world champion. He had beat the champs, and he had several title defenses. But then there was this new up-and-coming boxer. And this new guy, he was big and strong, and he was mean. Well, to make a long story short, they ended up setting up this fight, this boxing match. And the day came for the match, and as they were headed out to the ring, there was a little scuffle in the back room, and Rocky's manager, his trainer, was wounded, and he was hurt, and he was really badly. But Rocky was saying, I'm going to call off the fight. And he said, no, go do it. So finally he goes and does it anyways. His trainer goes and sits in the room. And Rocky goes out there, and the whole time he was in the ring, he was totally distracted. He wasn't thinking about what he's doing, and he just got beat up. And he got laid out. He got knocked out in the 1st round. Well, time goes by, and they decide to have a rematch. And, so Rocky's training for this rematch. And you see him, and he's struggling with things, and he's not really committed to his training. He's totally distracted, and you can tell he's scared. And you can tell he's just not really, his head's not in the right place. And he's just not really sure about what he's doing. And really, till one day his wife comes and she talks to him. She has a very stern talking to him. And she basically says, you got to get your head in this or you're going to end up hurting yourself. And she really lays into him. And but it's funny because she's this quiet little person, and he's like, how'd you get so tough? And she goes, I live with a fighter. Anyways, again, long story short, they go in. And he changes. He starts training. He starts being committed to what he's doing. He thinks clearly. He's not distracted. He's focused on his purpose. And his purpose is to train and go in and fight. And when he goes in the night of the fight, they see him walking into the ring, and they're talking about how focused he is and how that determined look in his eye and this and that. And he is. He's purposeful, he's determined, and he is set on that purpose. See, at one time he had lost his purpose, but he regained it, and he said, I'm going, and that was all he was focused on, was doing that. Now, I'm not going to spoil the end of the movie, in case anyone wants to go out there and watch this movie that was made many, many years ago. But anyways, I won't tell you what happens. But you may be wondering, why in the world am I talking about Rocky Balboa, the fictional character who is a boxer? And I did because I think it makes a good point. You see, life can throw things at us that will distract us, that will knock us off our feet. Life can throw things at us. Life throws demands at us. It throws challenges at us. Or sometimes life will even throw good things at us. And, like maybe things are going really well and you have great opportunities and things are going, you're like, hey, I can do this and everything's great. But the point is, it's so easy for us to be distracted by good things or bad things. It's so easy for us to get distracted and to start chasing after these other things and to lose our focus on our purpose. And then we have to sometimes come back and renew that focus. But it'd be better yet if we just never lost it, if we just keep that focus. So we need to keep that focus, renew our focus on our purpose. And we need to be purposeful about doing the ministry, the mission that Jesus has given us. So as we look at these verses from Mark this morning, we can learn from the example of Jesus to be purposeful about mission. And we begin here seeing in verses 29 and 31 that life makes demands. Verse 29. Says, and immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. So here we're picking up the story where we left it last week. And they had just left the synagogue. And if you remember last week, he was in the synagogue and he was teaching. And he had cast out the demon. And the people were being amazed at him. They were like looking at it. It's like, wow, both the teaching had authority. And look at the authority, the power he had over the supernatural. He was able to cast out this demon and it had to obey him. So they were amazed over that authority, the power of Jesus, because it was obviously they had it, but then they were wondering about it because they were like, well, what does that mean? Who is this guy? Why? What's the significance? Could this be the Messiah? And so they were asking each other and questioning each other about Jesus. And Mark in here is showing us the greatness of Jesus. He's showing us that Jesus has all authority and power. He said it. We started seeing that last week, and in the verses that we're going to see today, and even on into the future weeks, we will see that he's showing us that Jesus has authority, that Jesus has power over all these things. So we're told here that after they left the synagogue, they go into Peter's house. And I know I said Peter, but when I read, it said Simon. Well, Simon and Peter are the same people, but Simon was his name given at birth. Peter was the name that Jesus gave him. And so they're at Peter's house, and when they go there, he finds out that Peter's mother-in-law is sick. In fact, she is so sick that she's in bed. Now, I've been around enough ladies that I know a lot of times if you have people over to your house and you're playing hostess, that even if you're not well, you're going to be up and serving, right? But she is so sick that she is in bed. But as soon as they come in, right away they tell Jesus about her. Now, are they making a request of Jesus to heal her? They just saw his power, his authority there in the synagogue. So now are they making a request? We don't really know for sure. It's very possible. But anyways, they tell him about her. And we're told that Jesus then went and healed her. But I want you to notice how this happened. They make this request and Jesus heals her. Now, last week, when he cast out the demon, what did he do? He simply talked to him. He simply said, be quiet and get out. He didn't go through any rituals, didn't touch him, didn't do anything. Just be quiet, get out. Here, how he heals Peter's mother-in-law, he simply reaches out, takes her by the hand, and helps her up. So in this healing, he's not talking. He just simply takes her by the hand. And he helps her up. And it says that he takes her by the hand, he helps her up, and she gets him served. So when we see this, that we see that the healing of Peter's mother-in-law is silent, it's immediate, and it is complete. And to prove that, Mark shows us, or tells us what she did next. She gets up and serves. Okay, that statement isn't in there just to say, look what a great servant she is, or what a great hostess she is. That statement is in there to show us that she was completely healed. She felt great, and she got up and served. She was so sick that she was laying in bed, flat on her back, and now she's up and moving. So that healing was silent, it was immediate, and it was complete. Well, then look what happens next. Verse 32 to 34. It says, that evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. And so we find out that the word has gotten out about Jesus. He had been at the synagogue and cast out that demon. Now he's at Peter's house and heals his mother. The word has gotten out about Jesus. They know who he is. They know about his power. They know about his authority. And they know where he is. And so they all come to the house. And it's like they're banging down the doors. Hey, we need Jesus. We need help. So they all come out to Peter's house to see Jesus. In fact, Mark tells us the whole city was there. Now, this is probably a little of hyperbole. But, he gets his point across. In other words, there are a lot of people. This is not just a few people that came out, or it's not just a small crowd, but the whole town came out. In fact, we'll use phrases like that all the time. We'll go somewhere and it's like really busy, and I'm like, what, is the entire town here? And so, but this is what he's saying. He said the whole city came out. All these people came to the door to be helped by Jesus. But you might notice that they waited until sundown, until evening. The reason why is because it had been the Sabbath. Now the Sabbath is over. See, the way Jews do their timing is that the day runs from evening to evening, sundown to sundown. And so It's the evening, the sun has gone down, so the Sabbath is now over. So the people are coming out now. Which is interesting here because Mark tells us that Jesus healed or cast out this demon on the Sabbath. We're told that he healed Peter's mother-in-law on the Sabbath, and nobody said anything about it being the Sabbath. No complaints. But here we find the people they're still kind of following their rituals, the ways, and they're not wanting to break the Sabbath, and so they wait. But then as soon as the sun goes down, as soon as the Sabbath is over, they all come to the door, and they all come to see Jesus. Now here's the interesting thing about that, is that also means that it's time for the day to wind down. And in an agricultural society, they don't have electrical lights and stuff like that, so when the sun goes down, people start going down. They start getting ready for bed and that kind of stuff. So it's in the evening, and it's time to start winding down. It's time to start settling in and getting ready for bed, and suddenly, knock, knock, knock. And suddenly, there's this big crowd gathering outside the door. And so Jesus here, he's been teaching, he's been doing these things all day long, and all of a sudden, now that it's time for the day to kind of start slowing down, everyone shows up at the door. All the sick, all the people who are possessed by demons, and Jesus has a lot of work to do. And Mark wants us to notice the authority of Jesus here. That he heals all these people, that he casts out all these demons. And he specifically says that he healed people of various diseases. Jesus isn't just there's not just one kind of sickness that he can heal. It's not just a few things, but various. In other words, there are lots of things that Jesus can do. Jesus has authority over all of these sicknesses, over all these diseases, over all these demons. And he's able to do this. He is not limited in any way. And these miracles of Jesus, they demonstrate his total authority over these things. Things from both the physical realm and things from the spiritual realm. Sicknesses, demons, it doesn't matter. Jesus has power and authority over them. And not only that, but these miracles that he does are backing up his message. When he comes and he tells people, you need to get right with God because the kingdom is at hand. These miracles are backing up his message as well. Now there's one other point that Mark made in those verses that we read. He said, when Jesus cast out the demons, it says that he would not permit the demons to speak. Now why? Well, Mark tells us. He says, because they knew him. But what does that mean? I mean, so why? Why is this a problem? Why does he not want them to talk about him? Because we saw it already. The first demon that he cast out in the synagogue says, I know who you are, Jesus of Nazareth. You're the Holy One of God. But here he's saying they knew him, so Jesus didn't permit them to speak. I think there's a couple things going on here. First of all, they knew him, and so they would say it. Just like that demon in the synagogue. They would say it. And Jesus didn't necessarily want their advertising. Even though they were supernatural beings, even though they knew the truth about who Jesus was, they were also evil, and they were deceptive, and not necessarily the person you want endorsing you. And so I think on one hand, Jesus said he didn't allow them to speak because he didn't want their endorsement, didn't want their advertising. But secondly, and I think more importantly, is at this point, Jesus is trying not to make a big deal about the fact that he's the Messiah. Not that he's hiding it, but he's not trying to make a big deal about it. And the reason is because the people don't understand what the Messiah is really supposed to do. They understand part of what the Messiah does, but not the whole thing. They don't understand that Jesus is going to come and he's going to suffer and die on the cross for our sins and be raised, and later will return to reign on his throne. All they are thinking about is him reigning on his throne. And so he doesn't want people to get all excited and start saying, hey, let's revolt now. Here's Jesus, and they see his authority, they see his power, and they say, Jesus can do these great things. There's no reason why we can't overthrow Rome. And then all the people could gather together and say, come on, Jesus, take us, let's go. And force him to be king now, and force him to overthrow Rome. And so he's trying to keep that messianic fervor down a little bit. Till they understand the real reason why he came. Or the whole reason why he has come. You see, the thing is Jesus, he doesn't want to bring that conflict with Rome now. He doesn't want to bring that conflict with the Jewish leaders now, because it's not yet time. He will let them know that he's the Messiah. He will tell them. But now he still needs to do teaching. He still needs to go from town to town and teach them about the kingdom of God. So he will let those people now know, but he'll do it in God's time. So for now, he says, just keep quiet. So all the people then have come to Jesus. They've come to the door and they say for Jesus to heal them and help them. And so he starts healing them, and at a time when most of the people would be thinking about getting ready for bed. And he probably worked late into the night. But I want you to see what he did next. I'm sure he was tired, but look what he did next in verse 35. It says, and rising very early in the morning. He got up early. After staying up late, after working all night, he gets up very early. He says, and rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. Now, what did he do? He went out to pray, to spend time with the Father. Now, why? And see, before I get to that's the big deal here. I'm not making such a big deal about the fact that he got up early or when he did it, other than that he did it. And he made it a priority to do it. So he gets out to pray to the Father, to spend time with the Father. But why? Here's the thing I find interesting. In the middle of these stories, these various accounts of the authority of Jesus, these various accounts where Mark is showing us how powerful and how much authority Jesus has, we get this little statement that says he rose up and he went out to a desolate place to pray. You see, his power and his authority came from God. And he needed to spend that time with God. In fact, later on, the Jewish leaders will question this. Where does his authority come from? And they'll accuse him of casting out demons in the power of Satan. But Mark is showing us right here where Jesus' authority comes from. Jesus spends time with the Father. He's right with God. His authority comes from God. And so we see Jesus here. He's worked hard. He's given of himself. He has served many people. But oftentimes when he was doing this, he would often take time to get away and pray. To get away just to spend time with the Father. And I think he needed it. Sometimes we remember, well, Jesus is God. He's all powerful. But we also remember Jesus is human. And he got tired. You know the story when he was out teaching and he got in the boat and he fell asleep and there was a storm and he was still sleeping through the storm. He was a man. He got tired. And I think Jesus needed this time with the Father. He needed to fellowship with the Father, to spend time with the Father and be strengthened by the Father through the Holy Spirit. So Jesus finds this time and he goes out to pray. But I want you to notice this, that he made it a priority. He was very purposeful about doing this. He did what he needed to do in order to make it possible for him to spend this time with the Father. He did what he needed to do to make it happen. He got up early. Even after staying up late, he got up early. Why? Because everyone else was sleeping. And he went where? He went far away to a desolate place. Why? Because no one else was there. So he went to a place where he would not be distracted. He went at a time when he would not be distracted. So he could make sure that he had that time to spend with the Father. And so he made it a priority. And he went very early. He went to a desolate place. He went when and where no one else would be, so he could be alone with the Father. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Do you pray or make prayer a priority? Or do we just pray when we can? Or whenever it fits in? There's a song that was out, a Christian song out several years ago. And it was talking about praying. And there was one line in the song that says, the phone rang and I put you on the other line. Meaning that the phone rang and he was praying and he quit praying and started answering the phone and then started having this conversation and completely forgot to get back to God. And I think that makes a good point because we can be so easily distracted. We can be so caught up in the things that go on, where the phone rings or a tire squeal outside the door, and we have to get up and see what it was. We can be so easily distracted that we stop talking to God. But do we make prayer a priority? And do we do what we need to do to make sure it happens? Well, as the story continues, Jesus is out there praying, and all of a sudden everyone else gets up, and they start looking for him. Look at verse 36. It says, and Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. And he said to them, let us go on to the next towns that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. And he went throughout Galilee. Let me just stop there. That is why he came out. So here we have this. Everyone else has gotten up. And now we know why he had to go find this place all by himself, because they were looking for him, and they weren't going to leave him alone. And so everyone's looking for him, and we see that the disciples just join in on the search. And they don't say, Jesus is off by himself. He must have a reason. They just say, where is he? And they start looking for him too. And nobody will leave him alone. He's never left alone. And so they join the hunt. And I think maybe the disciples knew the places where Jesus would go and hang out to pray and that kind of stuff, because they found him. And so they go and they find him. And what do they tell him? Everyone's looking for you. And what do they expect Jesus to do? Go back to town. I mean, everyone's looking for you. Why wouldn't you go back? And really, I think the disciples are thinking this way. And they're thinking, well, the advantageous thing to do would be go back to town where the people are, where they are all clamoring for you, where you have some following, where people like you and they're wanting to follow you. And that would really be the strategic thing. I mean, if you're going to be the Messiah, and if you're going to take us and lead us into, to overthrow Rome, and we're going to set up this kingdom, and that would be the thing to do. Go back where the people are, where they're already coming to you, and use that situation to your benefit. I mean, they're thinking very practically. I mean, you already have this following. You got a great start. These people will be behind you. You can build on that popularity. But Jesus says that's not the way. That's not why I came. I didn't come just to become popular. I didn't come just to overthrow Rome. I didn't come just to gain these people to go with me to set up a kingdom. He said, but I have a purpose. I came, and I can't be distracted from that. I've got to teach, and I've got to go to the cross. Jesus has a purpose. His purpose was to preach the message from God to all of Israel. Not just to one town or a couple towns, but to all of Israel. He has this mission from God, and nothing will distract him from it. He is determined to do it. So when the disciples suggest, hey, let's go back to these people, to this town. And even when there's that allure of fame, or the allure of, this would be the easy way to do it, Jesus says, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to continue the mission. He said, let's go to other towns and preach there. And so he goes and he continues his ministry, and he teaches throughout the northern region of Israel. Look at verse 39. It says, and he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I will, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once, and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priests, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded, for a proof to them. I'm going to stop there for a second. So here he is. Jesus is out and he's teaching. And as he's teaching people, and as he's healing people, and as he's casting out demons, this man comes to him. And this man has leprosy. Now, Just hearing this is a little surprising, because the man has leprosy and he came to Jesus. This would be totally socially unacceptable, because by coming into the crowd, or where people were, where Jesus was, he was exposing everyone else to the disease. But this man comes right to Jesus, so we know he's bold. But he also comes to Jesus and he's respectful towards Jesus, says that he kneels before him and that he pleads with Jesus to heal him. We're told that he was imploring Jesus. But this man is desperately sick. But he's also a man of faith, because he says to Jesus, "If you will, you can heal me." You see, he's heard enough about Jesus that he believes Jesus can heal me. And that's why he came to Jesus, because he's certain that if he comes, as long as Jesus is willing to do it, that he will be healed. Because if you will, you can heal me. He has faith that Jesus can do this. And we see that Jesus has compassion for him, and he heals him. But notice how he heals him. We're told again that he touched the man. Now again, this is a little surprising. I mean, if you just read about somebody touching a leper, someone who has leprosy, most people wouldn't even come close to them, let alone touch them on purpose. But Jesus reaches out and he touches the man. Obviously, he didn't have to touch the man to heal him. But Jesus isn't worried about contracting leprosy either. And he also has compassion on that man. And I believe he reached out and touched him. He reached out and touched a man who had not been touched for who knows how long. And I believe he touched him simply to show his love, his care, his compassion on that man. But he touches him and heals him. Well, then he tells the man, "I want you to go to the priest and offer the sacrifices that you need to in order to be declared clean." And then, so the reason why he needed to do that, so he could re-enter society, and then he could go home and all that. But he tells him, "But I want you to keep this quiet. You know, about me healing you, I want you to keep it quiet." Now, the reason, same reason as he didn't want the demons talking either. He's trying to keep that messianic fervor down. Trying to keep things, at a minimum. But there's a couple interesting things about this story and about this statement of Jesus, "Keep it quiet." Is one thing, when the man went and told the priest, he would tell the priest, "Yeah, Jesus healed me." And when he told the priest, "I had leprosy, I need to do the sacrifices and be cleansed," and that kind of thing, it would probably raise some speculation amongst the priests who saw it and said, this man said he was healed by a man. And let me tell you why. In Jewish culture and amongst the rabbis, they believed that leprosy could only be cured by God. In other words, if you were cured of leprosy, it was pretty much a miracle. And this attitude was kind of throughout Israel. In fact, let me give you an example of it. If you were to look back in 2 Kings chapter 5-7, I won't turn there, but we see a story of Naaman, who was an official from Syria, and he had a skin disease. And he had heard from a slave who had been taken from Israel that there was a man named Elisha, prophet in Israel, who could heal people. Well, the king sent Naaman to Israel and to the king with a letter saying, basically, "Please have this man healed," or "heal this man." And the king reads it, and we're told that he ripped his clothes basically like in mourning. But he ripped his clothes and saying, "Who am I? Am I God that I can heal this man?" You see, this is the idea. This is something only God can do. And he basically says, now we're dead because I can't do what this king has asked me to do, and now the king of Syria is going to come and attack us. Well, long story short, Elisha hears about it and says, "Come down here," and he tells him what he needs to do to be cleansed, to be saved. But as you see his reaction, "Am I God?" See, because this was the idea. Leprosy, there was no natural cure for it. So if you were cured of it, it was a miracle of God. Only God could do it. So if this man came and said, "Hey, I was healed of leprosy by a man," the priests are either not going to believe it or they're going to say, God must be working through this man. Who is this man? So even when Jesus tells him, keep it quiet, he says, go talk to the priest. The word's going to get out a little bit. So Jesus isn't totally trying to hide everything from people. The second thing that I find interesting here is that when Jesus tells them, don't tell anyone, he literally says, say nothing to no one. It's a double negative. And in English, if we say a double negative, it kind of cancels each other out, even though some people do it, but it's improper English. But in Greek, which is what the New Testament was written in Greek, it's good Greek. And you do it to emphasize. So when he says, say nothing to no one, he's saying, say absolutely nothing. In other words, don't talk about it. But the thing is when this man went home to his family and his friends, they all knew he was sick. And they would be like, how'd you get better? How are you here? Does he expect the man to absolutely... Can't tell you. I mean, I don't believe Jesus was being that dogmatic about it. But he's just basically saying, just be quiet about it. Keep it down. Jesus isn't trying to hide the fact that he's done this. He just wants to keep that fervor down, that messianic fervor. That he doesn't want people to start coming and pushing him to be the king right now, to overthrow Rome. He's wanting to be able to continue his ministry, to continue to teach people, and then go to the cross when it's time to go to the cross. Trying to keep people from starting a riot or starting a revolt and trying to make him king. Well, look what the man does in verse 45. But he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter. So what does he do? He goes out and he tells everyone. You know what he did? He totally, completely disobeyed Jesus. He did the exact opposite of what Jesus said. I mean, he went and he told everyone. Now, we're assuming that he went to the priest and did the sacrifice and was cleansed because he's interacting with people in society. But he's so excited about it that he tells everyone about Jesus and everyone about what Jesus has done for him. When I read this story, I can't help but to think, we have been given something way better than physical health. We've been given eternal life. We've been given forgiveness. We have been made right with God, become children of God. And I can't help but think about this. Are we so excited that we just can't keep our mouth shut? I just have to tell everyone. And I think when we aren't, it's because we're not really thinking about what Jesus has done for us. But I just can't help but think about, are we so excited? Are we so free with the news about Jesus, where we just want to tell everyone? But Jesus did this awesome thing for this man. And when people hear about it, they all wanted to come see Jesus. They all hear about what he did, and they all want to come see him. And you know what? This is a good thing, right? Hey, who is this guy? And they want to come see Jesus. So he's telling everyone, they all want to come see him. It's a good thing, but you know what? It caused a real challenge for Jesus. Because now, Jesus, we're told, could hardly move around in the towns. Because whenever he would go in, if he did it openly, people would say, hey, there's Jesus, and everyone would mob him. And he couldn't hardly get around. You know the story about the woman with the issue of blood. In that story where Jesus is walking through town and everyone's pressing against him, that's what it was like. He was like, I can't hardly move, because everyone was jockeying for his attention and to be close to him. But he says, so Jesus could hardly enter town because of the people who were clamoring to be near him or to be healed or to be helped. And so we're told that he had to stay out in desolate places. He had to stay outside of town. But you know what? Still, everyone was coming to him. Everyone was coming out from all over to see him. Now, but when I think about what Jesus did, he did everything he did on purpose. He was determined to fulfill his mission. And that's when I ask that question for us this morning. Are you determined to fulfill your mission? Are you living on purpose? There is a basketball player in the NBA. His name's Steph Curry. He plays for the Warriors. I just forgot what the Golden State Warriors. They're up in the Sacramento, Oakland area. But he is a great three-point shooter. Well, if you know what that is, if you don't play basketball, that means he shoots from far away. And you get extra points because from shooting far away, you get 3 points rather than 2. But he is a great three-point shooter. In fact, last year he set the record for the most three-pointers scored in a season. This year, he broke his own record from last year by 40%. And so he is a great three-pointer shooter. But you know what? It didn't happen by accident. He didn't just one day say, hey, I wonder if I can. Hey, I can. I'm really good at this. He works at it. He still practices it. In fact, he's getting further and further away. And he's like, okay, I can shoot from the three-point line, or I can shoot from 5 feet back. I can shoot from half court. And he practices this. And he has become very, very good at it. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened on purpose. Because he was determined to become better. He was determined to be that player. He did it on purpose. Now, last week, we talked about our mission. We talked about our mission, and we said that Jesus gave it to us. And it's and really our mission is a continuation of his mission. And what did Jesus tell us? He said, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded, and behold, I am with you always. So Jesus gave us that commission. He gave us that mission. That is our mission for our life. We also read that when we came to faith in Jesus Christ, when we believed in Jesus and we were saved from condemnation, that we were also radically changed. That we were made new creations, and that we were reconciled to God, and we were brought into a right relationship with God. After being radically changed and brought into that right relationship with God, God gave us a ministry. Remember what it was? The ministry of reconciliation. So we were brought into that right relationship with God, and now we have a ministry, a mission to go out and help others come to know Jesus Christ so they could be made right with God. He says that is our mission. It's really the same thing Jesus said, go and make disciples. So that's our mission, and we know that. We talked about it last week. But today, we need to ask ourselves, am I doing it on purpose? Am I being purposeful about fulfilling my mission? Am I and are you determined to fulfill your mission? And you're not going to allow anything to distract you from it. Are you doing what you know needs to be done in order to fulfill your mission? Are you determined not to allow anything to get in the way, whether it's demands of life or the challenges of life or fame or success or anything from distracting you from it? You see, our commission from Jesus was not only if you have an opportunity, make disciples. Our commission is not, if God drops the opportunity in your lap, make disciples. He says, go and make disciples. We are to be purposeful about doing it. We need to do what we need to do. Be proactive, purposeful. So what are you doing in order to have the opportunity to share the gospel? For some of us, that may be, I need to meet someone who's not a Christian. Because all my people that I interact with on a daily basis are Christians. For me, that is a big problem. Because almost everything, I work, I live, I do everything here at this church. So I have to be purposeful about getting outside of these walls and to meet people who are not believers so that I can have the opportunity to share the gospel with people. I have some neighbors who live across the street from me who moved in a couple months ago, and I have been busy and I have not yet gone across the street to meet them. I am going to go meet them. You can hold me accountable to that. If I don't do it, I'll be in trouble. But I'm going to be purposeful about fulfilling my mission. How can I get to know people? For some of us, it may not be a lack of knowing people. It may be a fact of just, how do I turn this conversation to spiritual things? Because you may work or play or be around people all the time who are not believers in Jesus. But how can you turn a conversation to spiritual things? What are you doing in your life to be purposeful about your mission? It may take some thinking. It may take some planning. It may take some rearranging of our lives. And I definitely think it takes some praying. Jesus had a mission. And he was determined to fulfill it. And he lived with purpose. We have a mission. Are you and I determined to fulfill it? To not allow anything to distract us from it? Are you living on purpose?